Welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk 28 years later, a very anticipated next film in this franchise. But before we jump into it, I just wanted to tell everyone I'm not sure if I am back to reviewing movies yet. I did want to give a little bit of information as to why I've been gone so long. If you are not interested in this, just skip ahead a couple of minutes. That'll probably do it, and I'll launch into the review. Anywho's, life has just been incredibly difficult for me currently, and I'm struggling to be able to make content. Mental health is sometimes one of the struggles that keeps us from doing the things that we love, and that happens to be the case for me at this time. But I did really want to make the effort to go and see 28 years later and make content around it, and I have done that, and I am going to try my absolute best, even if I can't make it to every movie and do videos as often as I would like. I am going to absolutely try my best, like I said, to do content on here as much as possible with the podcast. But with that being said, let's jump into the review for 28 years later. So for anyone who is not familiar with this franchise, this is the third film in the 28 series of, it's a zombie adjacent movies. The first one was done by Alex Garland and starred Cillian Murphy. The second was done by a completely different director. Alex Garland did not return for that one and has a whole completely different story and sort of cast going on. In this, it's not necessarily zombies. It's not zombies the way that you would picture them. It's people that are infected with what is called a rage virus. So they're not necessarily dead, so to speak, but they do have a lot of zombie-like qualities. The thing about 28 Days Later, which was the first film that I think made it stand out, is it's, for me at least, one of the first zombie movies or zombie-adjacent movies that we saw where the people who were infected were not just like these slow, bumbling, idiot monsters. They were very quick. They could chase after you. It really, I think, is probably where the inspiration of World War Z came from. Though I do know that was a book, and I'm not entirely sure if that book came out before or after 28 Days Later. But that first one I very much enjoyed. It scared me a lot. And so I was super interested in the next films. I did see like 28 Weeks Later, I think is the second one. And then this one is 28 Years Later. And there will be another one after this, at least one, though I am hearing through the grapevine that potentially there will be two more. But as far as what I've been able to confirm, there will be at least one more that, if I am not mistaken, is going to be called The Bone Temple, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. And that one apparently is the one that's supposed to have Cillian Murphy in it. I had seen something from the director that said Cillian Murphy was going to be in the second one and the third one. And now I'm not so sure exactly what he was talking about. Like, I'm not sure if it is true that 28 Years Later is the first in a new trilogy or not, because Cillian Murphy was not in this film. And I was deeply disappointed by that. Not that I don't enjoy the people that were in this movie, but 28 Days Later, just that sort of franchise, even though the second one did not contain any of like the original cast, to me has always just been Cillian Murphy. I don't know. He brought it to life, right? He was in that first film that sort of really got us hooked on this franchise in particular. And so I did want to see him come back for this one, or come back to the franchise in general, and see sort of what had happened to him, especially given the circumstances of this is, much later down the road in terms of what's going on with the rage virus. And I wanted to know, what happens to Cillian, but we don't get that in this film. In 28 Years Later, we are following a completely new group of people. We are following Jamie and Isla and their son Spike. And this sort of was much different, in my opinion, than what I was expecting. I really went in expecting it to be very similar because it is Alex Garland again to that first film. And for me, it was not. This was very heavy on the emotional impact of things or the emotional story that was going on here. It's more of a personal type deal than it is like a zombie movie. And I know, again, I know it's not a zombie movie technically, but if you're looking for like a lot of the bloody kills and that zombie action, you'll get a little bit of that in 28 Years Later, but you're not going to get a lot of it. And the majority of it, I will say, sort of was deeply disappointing in terms of the rage virus aspect of things. To me, 28 Years Later is going to be one of those films that you really like or you really don't. And I feel like I fall on the side of I don't really like what they did here. And I don't like it to the extent that now I'm not sure that I'm interested in seeing the remainder of these films, because a lot of the story, a lot of the things that are discussed in this or turns and takes that they've gone through in this film just didn't appeal to me or didn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Now, I will say there probably will be some spoilers to this review because it's difficult to talk about without. So if you are not looking for spoilers, if you want to see the movie beforehand, stop here, come back after you've seen the film, because we are going to talk about some details. I sort of feel like, again, I have to in order to get across why I wasn't all that thrilled with this film. Now, I do really like the cast. Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, I very much love them. And Ralph Fiennes, hello, like he's one of my favorites. I've always enjoyed him. He's such a good actor. They did not utilize him in this as much as I was expecting. I really, from the trailer, was expecting to see the character of Spike and the character of Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor, really to be the main focus, right? You see the group of them together a lot. And I sort of thought it was going to be one of those things where they are out surviving still during this rage virus. And it shows sort of these little communities that are still kind of struggling to survive after everything that has happened. In this film, what sort of struck me as incredibly odd is we are 28 years later, right? That is the whole point. We're 28 years into the future of the first film. And really all that they're saying is that the UK essentially has been quarantined entirely off and the rest of the world has just kept going as normal. We do run into a character named Eric, and he is sort of in the military. He's part of the military of the rest of the world that's sort of keeping the rage virus people in the United Kingdom from escaping and going into the rest of the population, right? They still have cell phones. There are still delivery drivers that are going around. It makes very little sense to me because, in my opinion, I don't think that the rest of the world, the United States, the rest of Europe, Australia, all of these other countries are just going to casually sit by and let 30 years essentially go by with this sort of rage virus zombie outbreak and not do anything about it. Like, clearly these people can be killed, and clearly there would be, in my opinion, scientists or doctors or someone looking into a potential cure or, what causes this to happen. But at the very least, I feel like the rest of the world would have nuked the heck out of the UK, cleared away all the infected at the very least, and then rebuilt that civilization. But we don't see that here. We just see them being completely quarantined. The main characters that we are following of Jamie, Spike, and Isla are living on this island that's sort of secluded from the mainland of UK. It can only reach the mainland via a causeway, and this is how they sort of keep the infected from coming back with them. But then again, later on in the film, we do see that the infected also can cross this causeway. So I'm very confused with how they've remained, somewhat intact or somewhat normal. It's a very, thriving, in my opinion, small village or small town that we are presented with here. And then on top of that, we do see some more information that's coming out about this rage virus. And we do see at one point, this is a heavy spoiler, but that they are breeding with one another and having uninfected children, which also to me makes zero sense, because would they not then just consume their own children? I'm not sure how that works. And just knowing anything about pregnancy, what the mother has, the baby will surely have. So it just doesn't make sense to me that people with the rage virus would not be then passing that rage virus on to any sort of offspring that they have. Also, it's just sort of, this might be TMI or weird or go in a weird direction, but nothing about the rage virus people, especially from the first movie, but seeing them in the second as well, it's like, are they at all preoccupied with doing the dirty with one another? I feel like no. I feel like they are just looking for something to consume, looking for something to eat. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that part felt very unrealistic in my opinion and was hard to wrap my head around. And then the very, very ending of this film, I feel like went way off into left field. I didn't understand what was happening. This story, I would say, is kind of three stories in one. At the very beginning, you get like Aaron Taylor Johnson, this father-son moment, right? You have Jamie and Spike going out, and then Spike is this child. He's 12 years old, and he's going to learn to hunt these zombies for the first time, which I'm confused as to why that's necessary. Like, I get it, you are going to forage and stuff, but their town seems pretty self-sufficient in and of itself. Why would you ever need or want to go to the mainland? And for the sole purpose of killing the infected doesn't make sense to me. Collecting some things makes sense to me, looking for food, looking for resources, looking for others, but that is not at all what they're doing. Then you have the character of Isla, who has this mysterious illness that we are not sure of. And sort of in the second half of the film, it's Spike and Isla that are going to find Rafe Fiennes, because he once was a doctor in the olden times, right? In the time before the infected. And that is a completely different story in and of itself, which feels somewhat disjointed to me to that original start of the film. It's like you get half with daddy and half with mommy, and neither of those are really genuinely connected to one another. And then again, the ending is a completely left field, goes in a way different direction, has nothing to do with anything, and seems, in my opinion, very stupid. Like, very stupid. What is that? Why would that be in this film? I don't know. It just feels like one of those round tables of a group of people sat down, all threw in their ideas. They couldn't pick which ones were the best ones. And so they went with all of the things, but without necessarily thinking about or going into detail about what would make more sense in the context of this particular story. And again, it really feels disjointed from the first film, in my opinion. Like, they don't seem like they are connected to one another in any way, shape, or form, in style, in filming, in quality. I don't really know what's happening here. I have noticed a very huge disconnect between, for instance, like the Rotten Tomatoes movie reviewers from the general audiences. And this, I think, got like a 91% score from movie reviewers. And I think that the average score for this film with general audiences is something like a 2.5 out of 5. And for me, that seems about right. Like, I just don't think that this was exactly what it could have been. I think that it could have been done differently and much better, and this one feels like its own entity. There were a lot of decisions made in this film that to me didn't make any sense, that felt like a completely different story, that felt different in a way that I didn't necessarily enjoy, and which really, really like took me out of what I loved about this franchise before. like why I loved the first film, why I enjoyed the second. This one just, it really doesn't feel like it makes much sense to be connected with the other two. So I don't know. For me, this one was not necessarily a win. I would not even suggest going to see this in theaters. I would say wait until it comes out on streaming, because I don't know. I can't say whether people would like it. Like I said at the beginning, I think you will either really enjoy it or you will really not enjoy it. And I don't think there is going to be much leeway in between that. I don't think there are going to be very many people that are like half and half, somewhat in and somewhat out. For me, this one was not a total loss. I did enjoy some aspects of the film. Some of the emotional impact I thought was very unexpected and I enjoyed. But overall, this just did not feel like it belonged in the 28 Days, Years franchise. This just did not feel like a next continuation in the stories that we've gotten so far. So I don't know. I would love to know what you guys thought of this one. If you have seen it, subscribe to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.